My next guest is probably one of the least surprised persons on the planet as to the revelations of the Twitter files that show the suppression of conservative and conservative content, collusion between government and Twitter, and suppressing debate over whether the COVID lockdowns and vaccine mandates were a bad idea. His website says, "We are conservatives who are alarmed by the role big tech plays in our society. We are concerned by the political and economic harms big tech platforms such as Google, Facebook, and Amazon are inflicting on Americans. These harms include negative content, conservative bias, privacy violations, anti-competitive conduct, and employee abuses. We formed Internet Accountability Project in order to speak out against big tech before it's too late." Please welcome Mike Davis, president and founder of the Internet Accountability Project. Mike, as I said, you're probably one of the least surprised persons on the planet. We found out all the games that were being played on Twitter before Elon Musk bought it.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on, Larry. And it's very clear that Elon Musk, he's a benevolent billionaire. He did a very good thing here by buying Twitter with this $44 billion bad investment, and he has restored free speech online. And we would not have been learning about this illegal, unconstitutional collusion between government actors and big tech, but for Elon Musk releasing this. And this is a problem. They have this Section 230 immunity that protects them from essentially getting sued for how they manage their algorithms and how they put content online. They have this antitrust amnesty that big tech has had, for the last 15 plus years. And what has happened between this antitrust amnesty and this Section 230 immunity is these internet infants of 1996, like CompuServe, America Online, Prodigy, have turned into these trillion-dollar big tech monopolists. Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, along with their little brother Twitter before Elon Musk bought it. And they use their market power to crush competition, shutter small businesses, and cancel conservatives and others with whom they disagree. And the problem, Larry, is that what happens if Elon Musk succumbs to these advertiser boycotts where the left is trying to get his advertisers to get off Twitter, to bankrupt Twitter? What happens if he survives those advertiser boycotts? And then we have the Parler play, where Parler was a startup competitor to Twitter, quickly got a $1.3 billion valuation. People were saying, if you don't like Twitter, build your own. So Parler did. So what happened? Parler got blamed for January 6th, even though the protests were organized on Facebook. Google and Apple kicked Parler out of the App Store duopoly, and Amazon kicked Parler off the internet. That's the next play. They're going to do advertiser boycotts to try to crush Twitter. And if that doesn't work, they're going to do the Parler play. And so that's why it is so important to update and enforce our century-old antitrust laws to break up big tech, break up their gatekeeping power over information and commerce.
Mike, it's one thing for them to suppress conservative content. It's another thing not to tell people that they're doing it. It's another level of evil, in my opinion, to deny, even under oath, that they're doing it. Back in January, I wrote a piece about an article that was in USA Today that talked about a study that was done at NYU Business School that purported to show not only were we conservatives paranoid, we claim that these platforms were shutting us down. If anything, the evidence shows that liberal content is being suppressed, not conservative content. And it was done, a study by the Stern Business School at NYU, purporting to show that we are all full of it. We have known this for years, and yet they continued to deny it. The day that Elon Musk first announced, Mike, he was buying Twitter, I gained 10,000 new followers in one day. That's a whole month's haul for me normally. And then when he backed away and tried to get out of it, little by little, the increases began to be smaller and smaller. Then when he announced his purchase, 5,000 in one day. And ever since then, I've averaged a minimum of 2,000 new followers each and every day. Imagine how many I would have had and others would have had we not been suppressed.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we saw Molly Hemingway wrote a book on this. I think it's called Rigged, where it talks about how big tech was able to throw the presidential election in 2020. They have too much power. They can suppress information. We saw this with the Hunter Biden laptop story. The New York Post, one of America's oldest newspapers, had smoking gun evidence that Hunter Biden on Hunter Biden's laptop that Joe Biden, his son Hunter, and Joe's brother James were on the Chinese and Ukrainian payrolls. It was smoking gun evidence. And so this absolutely would have changed the outcome of the 2020 election. There's no way Joe Biden would be sitting in the White House if that happens. And big tech knew this. And so what happened? You had these former Intel goons saying that this was a Russian disinformation campaign. And then they got big tech not only to censor this New York Post story, but actually make it impossible for people to go to the New York Post link to read that story. We know that this would have changed the outcome of the election. And it's just unbelievable what they did during COVID. Look what they did. They censored doctors and scientists during COVID because they disagreed with Tony Fauci and the COVIDians. And they censored these doctors and scientists who ended up being right. And this caused, millions of people to unnecessarily suffer, thousands of people to unnecessarily die, 2+ years of lockdowns and misery that the science did not support. This is a dangerous game when big tech can influence elections in the most powerful country in world history. And they can help cause the world to shut down to Chinese style lockdowns because of COVID. We have to break up big tech. Let me just say it this way: if Google competed with YouTube instead of acquired YouTube, there's no way that YouTube would have censored Rand Paul, a medical doctor, because he disagreed with Tony Fauci on COVID measures.
I was looking at the book 1984 by George Orwell, Mike, and I tweeted, George Orwell, compared to what's going on right now, was an optimist. I mean, this is unreal. Take away the computer guy making a copy of the laptop before giving it to the FBI. We don't even know about it because he turned it over in 2019 and they sat on it and sat on it and sat on it. Had he not made a copy that ultimately got in the hands of Rudy Giuliani, we might never have known about the Hunter Biden laptop.
Absolutely. And remember, it's these deep state actors. We saw this, that FBI General Counsel Jim Baker was, he was behind the Russian collusion hoax when he was the general counsel of the FBI. And then he goes over and serves as the deputy general counsel at Twitter. And he's the one who was pushing to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story in 2020. So he tried to influence the election in 2016 and in 2020, and he was the one behind the COVID lockdowns at Twitter. I mean, these are bad actors. And again, we have to have Republicans need to wake up. There are too many Republicans who say, "Oh, this is a free market. This is a free market. We shouldn't interfere in the free market here." I would say, no, that's wrong. When you have these trillion-dollar big tech monopolists using their market power to crush competition, shutter small businesses, and cancel conservatives, we no longer have a free market. A free market requires a functioning market. And so in order to have a functioning market, we need to update and enforce our century-old antitrust laws and break up big tech. This is law enforcement. You are targeting the tumors, the bad actors on the market, so you don't need industry-wide regulations. Facebook is calling for industry-wide regulations because they were a trillion-dollar company. They can afford these regulations. Startup competitors cannot. And so Republicans need to get off the Chamber of Commerce bandwagon and start understanding that we need to break up big tech. They are a very much, Democrats always say democracy is in danger. I don't know how you can get more dangerous to democracy than big tech colluding to throw elections like they did in 2016 and 2020.
Well, Mike, I'm a small L libertarian, and I'm not one of those who likes to have the government break up much of anything. I'm more worried, Mike, about the First Amendment. More worried about the pressure that government, federal government, FBI is putting on these platforms in order to get them to suppress stories, tailor stories, alter stories. That to me is an attack on the First Amendment, even worse than some of the things that you're talking about regarding monopolies and antitrust.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, as a libertarian, you should be for antitrust law enforcement because it ensures we have a free market. Right. And in order for, to have that libertarianism in this country, you must have a free market. That's the whole basis of libertarianism. And so when you have these cancers on the free market, these monopolists are cancers on the free market does not work. And we've seen that for 15 years with big tech. But to your point about the First Amendment, I completely agree. It is clearly illegal, maybe even criminal, for federal government, any government employee, to collude with private actors to censor Americans. That is a clear violation of federal law, the First Amendment, federal statutes, probably many state laws as well. That cannot happen. But let's just step back and remember the reason that these big tech platforms bow to these requests by the government to censor Americans is because they get Section 230 immunity and antitrust amnesty. And if there were more if there were more Twitters out there, if there were more Googles out there, if there were more Facebooks out there, if there was actually competition, it would be a lot harder for the government to censor. Again, back to the Rand Paul arguments. If Google competed with YouTube, they would not be censoring Rand Paul.
Right. Now, Mike, I said in my introduction, whatever's going on at Twitter, we know damn well is going on at Facebook, at IG, at Google, at YouTube. What shocks me is over the years, these platforms have had likely employed tens of thousands of people, that nobody has written a book, that nobody has defected, that nobody has come forward and said, this is outrageous, shows me, Mike, that they hire based on ideology. They probably go over your social media footprint for years. And if you've done anything that suggests that you're a conservative and you're not buying into the left-wing wokeism, you're just not going to be hired.
Well, that's very clear. Remember Twitter, what was it, $44 billion, a lot of money, but that is like 10 times smaller than Facebook, and I think it's 25 times smaller than Google and 50 times smaller than Apple. So, Elon Musk can afford to spend $44 billion to buy Twitter. No one can afford to buy Facebook or Apple or Google and take it private. And that's the issue is just like you said, Larry, just imagine what's happening at Google, Amazon. Amazon's 25 times bigger. Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple. If this is what's going on at Twitter, if they had 80 FBI agents working with Twitter to censor Americans, just imagine how many FBI agents are working with Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple. I mean, it's just they have these companies are too big. They have too much power, and it's too easy for the government to choke them because they're monopolists, right? They're monopolists in different parts of the tech market. Right. And that's why we need to break up big tech. We need to end their Section 230 immunity. We need to end their antitrust amnesty. And we need to have people start suing because when they're colluding with governments to censor Americans, they need to pay a price. People need to start filing lawsuits against these big tech companies for violating our civil rights.
And Mike, where are these free speech people on the left? Where's the ACLU? Even if you hate conservatives, hate Donald Trump, I would think that you would be very disturbed about the fact that the Great Barrington Declaration, people that signed it, were suppressed, were bottle capped. Their dissent from the lockdowns and from the vaccine mandates and mask mandates were not widely heard. And as you pointed out, probably about 100 million people went into poverty because of this. A bunch of people suffered depression and suicide, and we had an increase in spousal abuse, all because of these lockdowns. And the debate on whether or not we should have these lockdowns was suppressed. It seemed to me, even if I'm on the left and I hate Donald Trump and I hate conservatives, I would be bothered by what the big tech platforms have done to suppress healthy discussion that might have made things a lot better.
Well, as you know, Larry, this is not our parents' or our grandparents' Democrat Party anymore. These are not liberals who love America and believe in free speech and equality and due process and just disagree with conservatives on the best way to get there. These are leftists. These are Marxists. These are people who hate America. They're subversive. They're trying to destroy our country from within. They're beholden to China. And they don't believe in free speech. They actually believe in the opposite. They believe in censorship. They don't believe in equality. They believe in the opposite. They believe in equity. They believe in BLM. We especially saw this from 2020 on when they just took off their masks and came out very publicly with their COVID restrictions, the COVIDians, the BLM, the Antifa. These are Marxists. These are dangerous people who are trying to destroy our country, and they've taken over every institution in America, including big tech, big media, universities, now even the woke military. Right. I think the only industry that they haven't gotten their claws in yet is big oil, and that's next.
Mike, I am old enough to remember when the ACLU defended a group of Nazis that wanted to march through an area of Illinois called Skokie, which was heavily populated by Jews. The ACLU defended that on the grounds of free speech. I would have thought again that there'd be some remnants of ACLU people who'd be saying, hey, wait a second. I really am not happy with Republicans and Donald Trump and blah, blah, blah. But this, for crying out loud, is big brotherism, and we need to do something about it. But nothing, not a peep. I'm stunned. I really am.
Yeah, and thank God for Elon Musk, because it sounds like he's one of those guys who was a Democrat, probably liberal, socially liberal, but he believes in free speech, like my parents did, my Democrat parents did, like my Democrat grandparents did. I mean, it's unbelievable to me how hypocritical. There's no longer liberalism in the Democrat Party. They're very illiberal. It's Marxism. It's silence. It's censor, silence, cancel, deplatform conservatives and those with whom you disagree. They're the most intolerant people on the planet. They don't tolerate free speech. They don't tolerate debate. They don't tolerate differing ideas. They want to cancel us.
And as you pointed out, this kind of wokeism has infused everything: universities, media, academia, big tech. It's infused every sector of our society, and it's just scary.
Yeah, and I think the reason this happens is you get these activist employees and activist shareholders who go to these companies and raise holy hell. And I don't think most of these big corporations are woke. They don't believe this nonsense. They just do this stuff. They just do, the 15 pronouns and gender affirming care for kids and all this other nonsense that BLM, Antifa, all this nonsense. They don't believe in this. These are corporate businessmen. It's that they're just trying to shut up these loud employees and loud shareholders. And what there needs to be a counterbalance to that. What needs to happen is we need to say, we've done this. Hey, Coca-Cola, if you go woke, you're gonna face some people on the right, conservatives, libertarians, who are going to stop buying your products. Conservatives, I know we don't like advertiser boycotts. We don't like boycotts in general. Right. But what we need to do to end this nonsense is we need to give them a dose of their own medicine. If we said to Coke, look, think about this. If you're a CEO of Coke, okay, if we don't go woke, we're going to have shareholders and employees go crazy. If we do go woke, the conservatives will just shut up and keep buying Coke, right? We need to make it where there's a different calculation for them, that if you go woke, there's going to be a price paid on the right.
Well, you were talking earlier about the way the media interfered with the 2020 election, suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story, saying it's Russian disinformation. I'm not saying that the media caused me to lose my race for governor, Mike. I am saying this. When I said that I don't believe that the lockdowns were a good idea, that I don't believe young people need to be vaccinated, young healthy people are not likely to get sick, not likely to get really sick, not likely to be hospitalized, and certainly not likely to die. Joe John from CNN interviewed me for about a half hour. They played about 2 minutes of what I said and then said, but that's not true. According to the CDC and Dr. Fauci, yada, blah, et cetera. So Elder was anti-vax, anti-science, even though, as you pointed out, the skeptics, the anti-lockdown people proved to be right. Now, am I going to get a letter of apology, you think, from CNN anytime soon?
I seriously doubt it, because they'll never admit when they're wrong. And what they did on COVID, as we discussed, Larry, this caused trillions of dollars in economic loss around the world, millions of lives lost, and absolute human misery for 2+ years. And there were people who unnecessarily suffered and died. They didn't get cancer treatments, cancer testing on time, cancer screenings. Kids, it's the wealthy kids had no problem during COVID. They had their soccer moms who would take them to their tutors and help them with their schoolwork. Democrats pretend they care about minorities. Think about poor Black kids, poor Hispanic kids in inner city schools who were, the teachers' unions kept them out of schools for 2 years because they wanted paid vacations. And what happened to those poor Black kids? What happened to those poor Hispanic kids in these inner city schools? They're the ones who disproportionately suffer. They're the ones who are even farther behind in school than they already were because of these COVID lockdowns. They're the ones who were abused at home. They're the ones who were neglected. They're the ones who didn't get lunch, didn't get breakfast. Did the left care about these people? Right. Hell no. The left only cares about power. and they use people, particularly more minorities, to get to their power. And it's disgusting. The silver lining out of all this, Larry, is I think people have been red pilled. I think there's been a great awakening that they saw that the left, they will use their power with COVID. They will lie, cheat, and steal, and it's dangerous. And they saw it during COVID. And I think there are a lot of people who are saying never again.
Mike, did it surprise you to find out that the Trump administration was also trying to alter what these platforms are putting on as well?
Well, I think it's illegal no matter what government official's doing it. I'm not going to defend the Trump administration officials for what they did there. I will say, from what I can tell, it was Trump. The Trump officials were trying to prevent people from, going out and buying critical supplies like masks, so doctors, nurses can have the mask. It doesn't. I'm not condoning what they did.
Right.
It's wrong, just like when Democrats tried to do the censorship. But at least there was a better reason for it than what Democrats did with the censorship during COVID, which was use it to reward their teachers' unions, to reward their friends, and for power.
Talk to us a little bit more about what Section 230 is, what it does, and why even some people on the left want to water 230 down.
Yeah, well, Section 230 was passed in 1996. It was to protect the internet infants like CompuServe, America Online, Prodigy from defamation lawsuits based upon what their users posted online. So if I went on America Online in 1995 and made some defamatory statement about you, Larry, not only could you sue me, you could sue America Online for defamation. And so Congress wanted to protect these internet infants from these devastating defamation lawsuits pushed by the publishers, by the way, that would have wiped out the internet economy. So there was a good reason for it. But what happened is, over the last 25 years, these courts have misinterpreted Section 230 and interpreted it way too broadly to give these internet companies way too much protection for basically anything they do online. Their algorithms, so they could knowingly have terrorist beheading videos and sex trafficking and all the other garbage that they use to get people to look at their online platforms so they can sell advertising to us, and they get Section 230 immunity for that. So what has happened? These internet infants of 1996, 25 years later, are now trillion-dollar big tech monopolists, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, and they are using, again, their Section 230 immunity and their antitrust amnesty to crush competition. We do not have a free market online. There's not an online free market, and Parler proved that. As we discussed, Parler was a startup competitor to Twitter, and it got crushed by the App Store duopoly and Amazon.
Finally, Donald Trump has been invited back on the Twitter platform. So far, he's not gone back on. Why do you think he's not gone back on, Mike?
Well, I mean, I would love to see Donald Trump get back on Twitter because I think it would help him get out his message to a much wider audience as he runs for president again. I don't think he wants to get back on right now because he owns Truth, right? And so I think he's trying to build up the Truth platform, and then maybe he'll decide down the road that he'll get back on Twitter when it's most advantageous to his presidential run. He's a very smart, shrewd businessman, and he's probably thought this out a heck of a lot better than I have.
Mike Davis, Internet Accountability Project. Mike, thank you very much for coming on. God bless.
Thank you, Larry.